Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. So this is a really big and exciting day. As you can see behind me, I'm at the Grand Design Customer Service Center, and today is the day I finally get my rig back with all of the repairs that I had to get done to the frame. Now we're going to dive into all the things that need to be repaired and all that kind of stuff. And we're also going to show the pickup process, or the process in which to get your rig when it's been through service here at Grand Design. Okay, step one, once you get here, all you need to do is go on in and check in and let the service writers know that you're here. And then I think they're going to get somebody to go get your rig and bring it out to the staging area. And because I may not have time to go over all this while it's happening, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do then is we're going to go through the entire rig, and they may not let me record that, so I'm telling you right now. But you go through your entire rig with them and the service manager, as well as the service writer, to make sure everything has been covered. Once you get all that, you sign off everything, and then you take the rig away. That's how it works. So I'm going to try to film as much as I can, but again, not sure what they'll allow me to film. They're very strict around here, what you can and cannot film. So let's get into it. Let's walk on in and check in, and go get my rig back, finally. Hello. Okay, one other thing you should know is Grand Design would not allow me in the factory, or I'm sorry, in the service bay to film anything. I wasn't allowed to take pictures, film, record, anything. So I'm relying on a couple of the pictures they supplied me during the process of repairing it. And I'm going to do my best to try to explain to you visually out here what happened and what had to be repaired. So bear with me on that while I try to explain this all to you. So first I gotta apologize for all the background noise. They're re-roofing a building right across the road here, and they've been doing it for days. I just can't get away from it, so I'm stuck with it. In addition to that, I apologize. There was not a video last Sunday. A lot of you were asking what happened. I had a lot going on with some other things you'll learn later on in this video and the next, why I didn't have time to finish this edit. So apologize for that. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff. This is my bucket list day. And yes, if you've all seen the videos about me talking about slide out issues I've been having, potentially a broken frame, and the reason I took it all up to Indiana, and it was there for a month. So I want to first tell you, as you guys saw me do the tours of all the different places, the folks at the service center at Grand Design Service Center, they couldn't have been more kind and wonderful. They're very, very gracious and very polite and very accommodating. But let's dive into the repairs. So as I mentioned, the rig was in there for a month. Well, just shy of a month, just a little bit less, but I was up there for a month. And yes, they did confirm the rig was, or I should say the frame was broken, but it was not just broken. It had cracked welds and broken pieces in 17 different places. That's right, you heard me, 17 different places. They had to repair the welds, and we're going to dive into what they did in repair-wise. But I had some serious issues. In fact, I think when the first break happened and I started moving around a little bit, it kind of tore itself apart. That's what we all kind of came to the conclusion. It was slowly tearing itself apart. And if you all remember, from the day I bought the rig, I had slide out issues. And I think I had it a week when the slide on the passenger side here, this one here, failed. And it took them 2.5, 3 months to get out there to repair it. And when they repaired it, it lasted for maybe a month, not quite a month, and it broke again. So then I had to wait for parts again for another month or so, and then to get them to repair that. So for all of you that have been following this, when I first got the rig, I was only able to have the slide out for a month and a half maybe of the 4 or 5 months I owned it. So I was living in the living room with the slide out that wouldn't operate, wouldn't open up. So it was a pain in the butt. So as things kept progressing and we got that fixed, then the other slide out on the other side of the living room broke. So without giving you all the gory details, and I know a lot of you have seen all the other videos, this slide out broke 4 times, the other slide out 3 times. So a total of 7 times these slides were completely failing. And it was when last January I was at the RV show in Tampa. I said to all the guys, aren't you interested in figuring out what's causing this? And one of the guys says, yeah, we should figure that out. So what they had me do is do some measurements, and you guys maybe have seen that video where I did some measurements from the pin here down to the frame, and I'll do some little overlays here so you can see that. So when I did all that, we found that it was out about 2 inches at an extreme part, and it should only be no more than 1/4, but can sometimes go up to 1/2. So I was way out of spec there. So they, after seeing those measurements, they said, yeah, you got to get your rig up to the factory. We got to take it all apart and look at it. So we did all that. They had to schedule it, and sadly, this all took place in January. They couldn't get me in until June, 6 months. So let's fast forward now back to when I was in Indiana and what they had to do and all the work that they had to do. As I mentioned, it was broken in 17 different places, and it was continuing to tear itself apart. Okay, so as you can imagine, they had to take the whole front cover off. So they had to basically remove all the molding and all the caulking and everything and unbolt this and bring it down. In addition to that, this underskin here that's down here all had to come off, and the door and all that. So this whole front of the rig was off. You could actually see the back of the cabinets in my living room. And speaking of that, they eventually had to take out part of those cabinets, and I'll explain why here in a moment what happened. But the major crack that they found was the kingpin here. These brackets that are holding up to the frame, the way they mounted these brackets are honestly not the best way to do it. There's a better way of doing it. But because of the way Grand Design requested them to be designed, they mounted them in a sandwich, and you'll see that in the picture here. They're mounted straight up and just bolted or welded to the frame that goes this way. And let me first tell you that one of the disturbing things that I found is that while in Grand Design and confirmed by other manufacturers, as well as when I went to Lippert, there's a major problem with all these frames. And it's not a fault of one or the other. It's kind of a collective fault of the industry. They're always trying to get the cost down. So the problem is when they do that, they cut material costs, they cut labor costs, they do things like that. So when they design these, well, they design them to match the floor plan that's on there. They're not planning on the fact that these are going to be full-time rigs. They're not planning on the fact that these are going to be used to go across the country multiple times. So when they design them for the people that use them on the average, you know, maybe a month or a month and a half every year, they're perfectly fine for that. For us full-timers, they're not designed for that. And I'm going to piss off a lot of folks here in Indiana when I say this. But I did confirm by multiple sources that these frames are not designed to carry this weight. And when I say this weight, this is the weight before you put a single thing in there. Before you put a pair of shoes in there, before you put a picture on the wall, before you do anything, they're actually not designed to carry this weight over the rough roads we see in America. This has been explained to me by several manufacturers. In fact, statistically, what I came across from and verified by several of them, 7 out of 10 of these frames are going to fail or are failing or have failed. 7 out of 10. That's staggering numbers. So my advice is when you're getting a rig, whether it's a brand new one or used one, get it inspected, because the transport company who brought it from the factory down to the dealer where you buy it, they may have already broken the frame before you even buy it, which was the case of mine. It was already broke when I bought it. So, statistic that I know is going to piss off a lot of people, but it is a number that I did get verified. It was first said to me at the actual Grand Design Service Center by not one, but two people who verified that. Then I took that number and I tried to verify it with other manufacturers, as well as the manufacturer of the frame, Lippert, and they confirmed, yeah, they're too heavy for what they're designed for. Now, there's one company out there, and I'm going to shout out, you guys already saw the videos, Brinkley. They're doing it different. When they went to Lippert, totally changed the conversation. They design it to be full-time use. They design the frame completely different than the rest of them. Yes, the main part of the frame is on a jig at Lippert. They're all the same that way. But then the cross members you add, the size of the beams, the thickness of the metal, all that is then different. And that is selected in most cases by the manufacturer because of cost. So let's get back to this, but that is a statistic that I was shocked to find out. So my rig, prior to me buying it and prior to me putting a single thing in there, was already overweight for this particular design. That's a flaw. So as I mentioned, they took the cap and the front cover off here, and the first break was the weld on this side of the bracket holding the kingpin in. That weld was compromised. Over 60% of the weld was cracked or broken. So it was going like this. The whole thing was chucking like this in the frame. Well, that continuous chucking vibrated throughout this upper deck here. And when it did that, it started breaking the other side. And the other side was compromised, not as much, only about 10-18%, something like that. But what it did really mess up with is the cross member that went this way. The back cross member behind the front one here, that one was completely snapped off at both ends of the frame that goes this way. So it's completely snapped off on both sides. In addition to that, there's cross members that go all the way back here and all the way across. The center ones, 3 of them, were completely snapped off. The 2 end ones were the only ones holding it on both sides. Had those failed, this would have dropped out of the rig completely. But they hadn't failed. They were the only thing really holding this in. So I got there in time. It was very dangerous to drive this the way it was. Now let's talk about the other issues. On the side here, there's small gussets on both sides. And they're triangular shaped gussets that they put in there. Well, on this side, it was broken across the top. And on this side, it was 50% broken on the vertical section, or vertical part of the weld. So, and you'll see that in some of the images here that I'm showing you. So that was all destroyed. In addition to these cross members in the back, while they were not all broke on the back side of where it's welded in, they were compromised. So they all needed to be re-welded as well. And that is, I believe there's 7 of them all the way across, counting the center one, 4 on each side, or 3 on each side, so yeah, 7 that were compromised. So that's just here where it's compromised, but there's more. But wait, there's more. As I mentioned earlier, the system was started just destroying itself, and it was working its way back. So the floor in my living room started doing some funny things. It was squeaking, and I noticed that the screws holding the wall and the floor, subfloor together, were backing themselves out on both sides of the rig, on both port and starboard side here. So the screws were backing themselves out. So as it was going down the road and shaking like this and doing this, these screws were working their ways out. And I noticed that because the stairs going into the living room started moving around and pulling the wallpaper and the board apart. I thought, well, that's odd. Well, basically what happened is when it had broken in the middle here, that shock wave basically emphasized everything in the middle of that subfloor. And the subfloor, when they took it all apart, they literally saw it was buckled like this. It broke all the way down the middle. And that's why I was getting all that squeaking and the shifting of those stairs. So they had to go back in and put that together, weld that and bolt that, and then put in some support members in there, which here I'm going to show you the video of those support members, as you see here. But they had to add all of this in order to support all of that. So that was a huge problem in itself. How much further I could have gone before it completely fell in, who knows? But it was a serious issue happening. So all in all, as I mentioned before, this frame was a complete disaster. Where the slide outs are, on the side of the rig where the slide outs are, you'll see right here and up at the top, the same thing. They had to completely remove the slides out of the rig and peel away the fiberglass inside and outside and re-weld it because it broke on all these corners. There was so much stress that it broke the side walls as well. And in the front here, they had to re-weld the cross member here on the side of the wall because that had broken. And this time when they put it back together after welding it, they actually bolted it through to the frame. Before, it's just sitting on little rails here with a couple screws on it. Well, now they bolted it this way into the frame, so it's not moving anywhere now. That's essentially the bulk of everything that got repaired on this frame. They had it, like I said, for a little over 3 weeks, almost a month. Forgive me, it's getting hot out here. And it took them that long to put all these welds in there and repair all of it. Now, I will tell you, I've driven it a little bit since then, obviously from Indiana back to Florida. And I'll tell you in a little bit here why I had to come back to Florida. But it is like a tank. This thing doesn't move or budge or anything like that. It rides a lot smoother. When I get into the rig, I was amazed at how many things were still in place versus last time everything was shaking around like a shake and bake type of thing. It was ridiculous. But it is built like a tank now. In fact, I think I have, if I dare say, the strongest Grand Design out there on the road today, especially this 376 TH floor plan. This whole front end has been completely reinforced and re-welded, and the subfloor and the walls have all been welded stronger, more gussets, more support beams, and this thing is a tank. You really feel the difference when you're towing it down the road, how solid it is and how much more comfortable it is to drive. It's amazing how that feeling, you can feel that in the steering wheel and in the ride in the truck as you're pulling it. So that essentially is it. Now, as I mentioned, everybody at Grand Design was wonderful and gracious until the end. What had happened, I'm going to tell you in next week's episode, but I can tell you right now, there was thousands and thousands of dollars of damage in this rig after they finished all the repairs. And I'll get into that in next week's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, ring that little bell to let you know when I'm putting out that video. And make it a great bucket list day. Goodbye.